They told me for years there was no money in podcasting. Well, they were all wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is a new venture for me. Welcome to the very first episode of Talking with Tarashuk. This is my solo podcast venture again, where I just talk to anybody I deem interesting. And anyone who knows me knows I love baseball. So today I am talking with Dr. Phil Riccobono. Phil, I hope I said that right. I practiced a little bit. Phil,
you got it.
Phil is an author. He is a publisher, an academic, and an MLB scout, and he's based out of Japan. So his interview is being done in the future. We're here to talk all about baseball, the craziness of this season. Also, he has a book called Baseball English, which is available now. Phil, welcome to the show. And for my very first guest, I'm glad to be talking baseball. It's definitely my comfort zone.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me, Will. Nice to meet you finally.
Yeah, you as well. You as well. So, story of baseball. I guess, well, who are you? Like, where'd you grow up and who introduced you to the sport of baseball?
Well, like most guys and girls, their dads or moms. Both my parents were baseball fans. I grew up in a Mets and Yankees household, a divided house. Mom's a Mets fan, dad's a Yankee fan. Yankees were better at the time, so I gravitated towards the Yankees. I grew up on Long Island, New York. Rich history of baseball there. Started playing in elementary school. And then I just never lost my love for the sport and followed it into academics, actually. Did my doctoral research in baseball vocabulary that would be useful for players coming over to North America from Latin America, Asia, wherever, where English wasn't their first language. And work in scouting here in Japan for an MLB team and just put out the book Baseball English, which is available on Amazon and sportsenglish.org.
So how did you come up with the concept of the book? We're not going to circle back to some of your favorites in baseball history, but I do want to kick the book off right off the back. So you have your doctorate. Is it in English? So like, how do you combine the world of like language in baseball?
Great question. So my doctorate is in English education, teaching English to speakers of other languages. So, you have to pick a unique dissertation topic, a research topic to do your PhD, which no one else has done. And I didn't find anything on baseball English, learning baseball English. So, that's kind of a broad area. So I narrowed it down to spoken vocabulary that's frequently used in baseball English on the field, in the clubhouse, between coaches and managers, even including cuss words, which we have in the book, that would be useful for learners of baseball English. And they could be players, they could be people who want to work in the front office. We have many teams have international scouts whose first language is not English. Just a casual fan, even friends of mine who've read the book now said, wow, I didn't know this language. I didn't know this vocabulary. I learned a lot. It's very technical. So yeah, to make a long story short, I wanted to pick a topic that I loved. If you're going to devote 5-6 years of your life in doing research, you may as well do it on something that you love, and it has to be unique. So that's how I got into baseball English academia.
So like what? Because it's something I never thought of. I was like baseball language. I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. You're in Japan, you can use baseball. Like I bet you probably have people watch baseball broadcasts as a way to learn English, but like what specific language? Because I come from I'm a huge wrestling fan as well, and I do a wrestling podcast.
Right.
And that has its whole language, like kayfabe, babyface, heel, like getting color, all these different phrases and words. And knowing baseball as well as I do, something I didn't think about. So like, what are some common phrases that the average fan doesn't even know is part of the baseball language? Like I think I saw on your website, kangaroo court. What is kangaroo court in order to baseball?
Court. Okay, so kangaroo court is the players get together, and it's kind of like half joking. They fine each other for offenses they've made in the clubhouse. Yabu-san, who's a good friend of mine, pitched for the A's and the San Francisco Giants and the Hanshin Tigers. He's a kind of a legend here in Japan in the NPB. He's also a broadcaster. He said, I was showing him the book. He goes, kangaroo court. Oh, I know that. So when I interviewed him, I said, well, what did you do to get yourself into kangaroo court? Well, he shaved his hair off of his body and left it in the drain. And so somebody reported him. They write it down. Yabu-san left hair in the drain, and then they put it into a cup. And then there's a judge who said, "Okay, Yabu-san, guilty or innocent?" Guilty. Okay, you have to pay $40. So stuff like that. I think in the beginning, everybody gets fined $1 automatically, but like, you were playing your stereo too loud, or you farted. It could be even things like that. I've heard stories of that. So it's kind of a joke within the clubhouse that each clubhouse has, and it's not just in MLB. I know they do it in high schools here in the States and college. I don't think they do it in Japan or Korea or Taiwan. I think it's more of a North American thing.
Have you yourself ever been sent to kangaroo court?
Yes, I have, and I'm not going to tell you why.
Oh God! All right, I'll get you off there. I'll get you off there. Okay, I'll get that story one way or the other.
All right.
But like, is the actual language? Is it more geared towards baseball? I guess like I'm trying to think of a word. I guess like a 2-run double, or like a certain type of slide you do, or like a difference between like a sliding catch and a diving catch. Is that certain phrases or words, or is it more generalized language?
What I did was to not bore you to tears. I took 800,000 words of baseball English spoken on the field, in the clubhouse, to the media, by players, by umpires, by coaches. And this is just not one document. It's several different texts. A lot of stuff off of YouTube, mic'd up things. And I took that database, which is called a corpus, and I compared it to a corpus of general English, of people speaking on television, on the telephone, authentic English. And I ran some statistical tests, and then this list came up of keywords, statistically significant keywords. Now, I didn't stop there. I then had 5 people who were in baseball, stakeholders of baseball English, check these words with a rating scale of 1 to 4. And if the word was a 3, for example, slider was a 3, closely related to baseball, but used in general English, like it's a little mini hamburger, it stayed on the list. You had other words like fungo, right, which is a bat that the coach uses, a long bat, used in practice to hit grounders and fly balls out. That is only used in baseball, so that's a 4. So basically, these words that are in my book are very unique to baseball and frequently used in baseball, and more often not frequently used in general English. I'm just going through like one list here. Attaboy, fungo, lineup, sign, manager, bunt, bench players. Some people know that, but these are very frequently used words, or most frequently used in baseball compared to general English.
Okay, I guess it comes to mind like a slurve, that kind of pitch. Like
Slurve is in there.
I've never used the word slurve outside of talking about MLB The Show or like MVP Baseball 2005. So was this book specifically written for non-English speakers, or like specifically, I guess, because you're based in Japan, was this specifically for Japanese either fans or players?
Well, it's a play off of my dissertation, which is designed for people who want to learn baseball English. Of course, you would think it's mostly for non-native English speakers, but like I said, a lot of people have looked at my research and my book and the vocabulary and said, and these are native English speakers who grew up in America or Canada or Australia, and said, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that word. So it's very technical. So it could be also used for somebody who wants to get into baseball and make sure that they're up to speed on the vocabulary, on the esoteric technical vocabulary that's used in baseball.
Okay. So what was the process like of writing this book? Because this isn't like a typical narrative where you have a beginning, a middle, and end, character development, a climax. This is a very technical book. So what's that process like of writing a book specifically around? It's such a niche topic. Is it harder than writing a regular book?
Well, this is actually my first book. The only other book I wrote was, let me show you here, was my dissertation, right? Which is like 335 pages before the references and appendix, and it's very technical and academic, so this won't sell. So I had to take basically the vocabulary out of this book, and that took a long time to get, like I said, I built that corpus, that database of language that's used in baseball. It took years to transcribe that. And then once I had the lists of words and phrases, I had to narrow it down even more because I had so much of it. I had like 170 single unit words and 335 phrases or 360 phrases. And then I had to, categorize them, code them for the topics. You have a unit on hitting, a unit on defense, a unit on jobs and scouting and like that. So it took a lot of time to arrange the vocabulary, put it into the right categories. And then I had to get a little creative. Okay, if we did a thing on hitting, for example, I wanted to go out and interview somebody who was related to hitting or pitching. Let's say I interviewed here and about a BP coach.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that's a job. He was a pro pitcher, played up to AA. He's not a scout for the Mets. His name is Connor Brooks. So these interviews took long to do and then put them into little reading narratives. I had to get a little shout out to my friend John. John Fitzgerald, TV producer who did Playing for Peanuts, to get permission to use the videos that are in the book. So this took a couple of years to write. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was, and it was just as challenging as doing the PhD. It was one of those things like, oh man, when is it going to end? But it was also enjoyable, but it was very labor intensive. The layout process was surprisingly a lot harder than I thought. I hired someone on Fiverr, a guy named Brandon. He did a wonderful job, but there was a lot of color and photos and moving parts in here. So it took a while to do. It really did. But now I'm a publisher. I have Sports English Press, and I'm working on a few other books. I think it was a great learning lesson working on a book for rugby English and also just a general book on sports English.
That's nice.
So really good,
very nice,
good experience. A lot of people
highly suggest doing wrestling English because it is a whole thing, and you got the whole of Japan that has their huge wrestling scene.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you don't like wrestling, get into wrestling.
I grew up on wrestling, and I think it really grew my vocabulary. Talking about vocabulary, like I can remember, the word plethora or potpourri. I learned that from wrestling. I can't think of some others offhand, but
the
wrestling
word maneuver.
Maneuver.
Vince McMahon loves the word maneuver.
Maneuver. So there's so many words that you can learn from different genres, for sure.
Well, I love it because like it sounds to me like you kind of hit one of my principles when it comes to podcasting with this book, which is what I call recycle your content. So you took your dissertation or your past interviews or videos or what have you, and like, okay, how else can I use this bundle of information I have? Let me write a book. Like some of these podcasts I do, I know for a fact I'm going to have them transcribed one day and it's going to be turned into a book. Like Will Tarashuk, My Life in Podcast, whatever it's going to be. Because like that's just my mindset. Recycle the content. This video right here is going to be broken down into social media clips, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So recycling of content. So I'm very glad you did that for a book because it's self-vindication that I'm doing something right.
And I'm helping people too. Like Fred Clare, who was the former general manager of the Dodgers for years, I think about 12 years, he signed Hideo Nomo. He essentially opened the floodgates for the Japanese to come over and play in Japan. Now, Nomo wasn't the first player. A good friend of mine, Murakami-san, was the first player in the early 60s. But Nomo really opened up the floodgates. And the thing that Fred Clare said to me was, he goes, the reason why I want to get involved with this and allow you to interview me about Nomo and Chan-Ho Park, he also opened up the Korean market to MLB, was because you're helping people. The goal of this book is, it's probably not going to make a ton of money. It's not going to be a New York Times bestseller, but if there's a guy out there or a girl out there from Japan, China, Korea, who loves baseball and wants to be a player eventually in North America, if this book can help them facilitate that process, help them communicate better, I would be, that would be the goal. Because these teams are spending millions of dollars to sign these players in MLB. And you want to have perfect communication as possible. As I put in the book, you really can't rely on these translators a lot, on the interpreters. A lot of them, unfortunately, were not baseball people. They might be great with linguistics, being bilingual in Japanese, Spanish, or Chinese or Korean, whatever the language might be. But a lot of times, this is the complaint within MLB: the translators or the interpreters are not baseball people. So if somebody says the catcher, there's a conference on the mound between the catcher, the pitcher, and the translator, and the catcher says, "Show me the cheese," right? Give me
Right.
I want a fastball. The translator, and this has happened, I have firsthand knowledge of this. The translator just says he wants you to give him cheese. So so if that can be avoided, that would,
Right.
that maybe the guy throws a slider or a curveball, and the guy was sitting on it, and he wasn't expecting a fastball. So that could have, ruined the game and the championship or whatever for a team, just by having miscommunication. So you want to try to have good communication in baseball, but improve it.
It's communication's key in anything, but I think specifically in baseball. And this is a trend I've noticed, at least in all my fandom of being a baseball player. It's that when you have Japanese pitchers, specifically Japanese pitchers, like Nomo, Daisuke Matsuzaka, or like Tanaka, I think was one who probably did one of the best. But after a few years in the MLB, their career just kind of fizzles out. They just don't do as well. And you have players like Ichiro, Kurt Suzuki, Hideki Matsui, who just have these long, incredible careers, like Hall of Fame careers to some extent. Do you think a big part of it is this poor communication for specifically pitchers, that their careers just don't pan out as projected?
Well, it's funny you say that. There's a pitcher by the name of Kei Igawa who the Yankees signed, and you can go back and Google his name, Igawa.
Oh, yes. No, I do remember him.
And he blamed, or he said part of the reason why he felt he wasn't having success is because he felt so isolated.
Yeah.
The culture shock and the language barrier. So perhaps this could have been avoided if he had learned baseball English from a very young age. You have to remember, a lot of these players, especially in Japan and Korea, I know in the Dominican now, MLB academies are offering English classes, mandatory English classes, and hopefully they'll get my book in there and start teaching baseball English as well. But in Japan and Korea, on the linguistic scale, English is here, Spanish is right next to it, and Italian, and then you have Korean, Japanese, Chinese over here. Pronunciation, sentence structure, grammar, completely different, right? Like Spanish and English are Latin based. So if you know English, you can figure out Spanish, and vice versa. It's a lot closer, in proximity linguistically. So I think, especially in Asia, if boys and girls are interested in becoming professional baseball players and playing even at the international level, where English is the lingua franca, or the common language on the field, talking with umpires and other coaches and things like that. Really important to learn baseball English young, especially if you're from one of those countries I mentioned in Asia, because it's just so different than English, than their language.
No, for sure. And it's only gonna help you. And I totally get it from a player's perspective. It's like, listen, I'm here to throw a baseball. That's my main focus. Like, English comes second. And I totally get that, because they're paid millions of dollars to throw a baseball or hit a baseball, play in the field, not to learn English. But learning English only helps. And I want to ask you about these comments that I'm pretty sure Stephen A. Smith made a little while ago about Shohei Ohtani, saying, because this kid is legit. He is the most craziest baseball player I've ever seen. Something being done in the MLB that hasn't been done since the Babe Ruth days. Literally,
generational player, absolutely. Yeah. But if he stays healthy, he's gonna do very big things. And we don't want to talk about Hall of Fame this early, but if he keeps this up for 10, 15 years, and he's
still young. He's like, is he in his 20s?
He's 26, 27, somewhere in there.
He's pretty much my age. But I bring up Stephen A. because he said something I'm paraphrasing now. Like Shohei Ohtani can't be the face of baseball because he doesn't know English, right?
Yeah.
He's not as marketable. And while people jumped on him and called him all sorts of names and whatnot. Now, I understand his points. Like, he's not totally wrong, but I also think he's completely wrong because baseball fans care about baseball, right? Like, there's a proper way to market Ohtani. Like, I open Instagram, I see every single one of his home runs, I see every one of his stat lines. So he's wrong in the fact that he can't be the face of baseball. It's just going to be harder. Like, what do you take away from those comments?
Well, I think they're very insensitive, and you have players who come over here to play in Japan from North America, or they're originally based in Latin America, and they're assigned an interpreter. I mean, imagine, I would like to see Stephen A. Smith go and work as a journalist in Japan and see how well he does. And he has to write and report and speak in Japanese. It's not happening.
No.
So I thought it was very insensitive. And a lot of these players, like Ohtani, actually speaks, he's picking up the language. He's a very smart guy. But when someone's speaking to you at normal speed, sometimes you miss things or you don't pick them up. So you need an interpreter there. And you don't, you may not have all the vocabulary or language to give an answer properly in English. I know if somebody asked me a question in Japanese, a lot of times I'm giving like elementary answers, and a lot of times I can't even, pick up what they say, especially if they're speaking fast. So it's very difficult. And I don't think you need to be a native English speaker or speak English perfectly to be the face of baseball. I think it's unbelievable and remarkable. Baseball's a global sport, so he is the perfect face for baseball right now. It's not just an American sport. It's not.
And whether Stephen A. likes it, he is the face of baseball. I mean, but to his point, it would definitely be easier.
And he's a great kid too. Let me tell you a story about him. When we were scouting him over here, one of the things, we know he can play, right? So what does a good scout have to do? They have to find out about his makeup, about his parents, about what he's really like. How does he treat other people? I have a friend of mine who lives up in Hokkaido and has students. He's an English professor like myself, who worked for former students who worked for the Panthers, Ohtani's old team. And so I asked him, maybe in 14 or 15, what's he like? What do you know about him? He said that this is the type of guy he is. He sees these clubhouse guys lifting heavy bags. He asks them, you need a hand? And he helps them with the bags. I mean, what kind of superstar, you talk about the face of baseball. I mean, maybe guys would do, but a lot of guys wouldn't do that. And it's also cultural too, I think. But he is a great person, great human being, a perfect guy for the face of baseball. Not to take away from anyone else, but he has it all. He has the looks. Some people call him an eight tool player because he can pitch and hit and just, yeah. So I think it's fine to call him the face of baseball.
He's also great with the fans. I see it all over the internet. He's out there interacting with the fans. He gives back to the fans. Like, this kid he really is everything everyone says about him. Is he the MVP?
Well, it's a little early. Let's see.
It's September as we're recording this, so it's either him or Vlad Jr. And I love Vlad Jr. He's another great face in baseball.
But I would do it. Of course, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, his pitching statistics aren't off the charts," but no one's doing what he's doing. Like, offensively, he's just about there, MVP-wise. But because he's doing both, I think I would give him a little leeway. It's just unbelievable what he's doing. I love it. And if the season ended today, I would say yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's the home run numbers for me. Like, he's leading in the home runs as we speak right now. I'm a big fan of Vlad Jr. I love his father. So
Absolutely.
and he plays on the Blue Jays. He's almost not single-handedly, but he's keeping the Blue Jays relatively in that playoff hunt as we're recording this on September 1st. So who knows? I mean, if he wins, I won't be upset. But definitely, and baseball itself is a much younger game. You have these stars with personalities.
Absolutely.
Trout, I just realized Trout's like 30 years old. Like, Trout was the talk of, he was the face of baseball, and he's a teammate of Ohtani. You never hear about Mike Trout anymore, but you got people like
Well, he's
Vlad
been hurt,
Jr.
right? He's been injured the whole year. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a younger game, and MLB is so excuse me, so risk averse right now. You
Mhm.
know, there's players who've come over from tried to go over there from Japan, but maybe they saw a little something on the medical and things like that, and we're not, we'll give you this amount of money, and they've did an about face and said, forget it, I can make more money in Japan. So it's you're right. It's definitely becoming a younger man's game, especially with offensive players. Pitchers,
Mhm.
they can go a little bit later in their career, longer in their career.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about you being an MLB scout. So, how did you get there? How did you go from, like professor, writer, going into MLB scout, and then moving to Japan? So, take me from point A to point B, from becoming an MLB scout, moving to Japan.
Well, actually, when I first became a scout, I was living in Korea and I was doing my PhD there. And like I mentioned before, I had the podcast coming to americabaseball.com and the blog and all that. And I was basically writing up like scouting reports and having players come on from Korean teams who were former MLB players and talk. We were talking about Korean players who might be going over, Japanese players who might be going over. Like at the time, it was Tanaka and Ryu Hyun-jin,
Mhm.
and basically giving out really good information. So I met my boss, shout out Sal Agostinelli, many years ago, and he said, "Well, why don't you just do this for us?" And you know how you kind of shut that thing down. I said, "Okay," and I learned a lot from him. And a gentleman named Steve Cohen took me under his wing. He
Owner of the
was with
Mets. That
not
Cohen.
that Steve Cohen. No,
No,
no, different Steve Cohen.
not that Steve Cohen. It's like, I know a lot of friends who would be very
Yeah.
mad at you if it was that Steve Cohen.
No, 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 different one. He's a longtime scout, and he's in the Junior College Hall of Fame for coaching baseball. And I played up until high school, things like that. So I've always loved it. And yeah, so that's like 10 years ago now, and have learned a lot. It's been great experience. I really enjoy doing it. Unfortunately, last year or so we haven't been able to get out there too much with the restrictions. But
Right.
here in Japan right now, most clubs will let scouts in and can go to the games.
So, as an MLB scout, what is something you look for in a player? Like, and also, how does that vary from pitchers to fielders to hitters? Like, so you got to have an eye for talent. What does
Mm.
that look like? What grabs your eye as a scout, particularly?
Well, with pitching, always the first thing you're looking at is speed, is velocity. How hard are they throwing? I know,
Their
like,
cheese.
yeah, exactly. And then, you're looking to see if they have some secondary pitches that are plus pitches or above average pitches. Makeup is a big part of it too. Of course, with the hitting, you want to look and see. Big thing now is exit velocity. How hard are they hitting the ball?
Mhm.
Are they able to hit? Do they have good pitch recognition? Or some hitters don't have that. There's different levels of that, and there's speed, of course. Where can they contribute defensively? And again, it comes down to makeup. And the most important thing you have to find out, because there's been some players here who are definitely MLB caliber, and people, rated them very high, but do they want to go? There are superstars in Japan who could play in MLB. I don't know if there'll be superstars there, but could play there, but just really don't have the desire to do it. They're comfortable here.
Right.
It would be culture shock. They don't want to learn the language. They don't want to really ruin a great thing that they've got going here. Other players that are less caliber would die to go over and try to compete at the highest level.
So, rank them for me. Easiest to hardest to scout. Pitchers, fielders, hitters.
Hitting is always the hardest because there's so many moving parts with the swing. Pitching's a lot easier, I think, because you have your speed gun. You can tell with the right away. You're eliminating people who aren't hitting a certain velocity. But the hitting, but it's becoming easier now with Statcast and
Mhm.
all of this recognition software that's out there, where you can kind of break down the swings easier and video and things like that. Yeah. Speed is speed. You got your stopwatch there,
Yeah, yeah.
and defense. You have to look at a lot of different things. There's a lot of moving parts with the footwork and things like, and read, on fly balls and just instincts and things like that. You're looking for instincts a lot with the defensively.
And baseball is a game of statistics. Always has been, always will be. There'll always be baseball nerds like us looking at
Hmm.
stats. People who don't know what whip is, but they'll look at it. Slugging percentage, on base percentage, slugging plus on base percentage, all those statistics. So how important are statistics when looking at a player? But also, like I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure scouts like passed on Derek Jeter because he didn't have the numbers, and then it turned out to be Derek Jeter. So as a scout, how do you try and balance like the numbers of the player and the heart of the player?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's like getting back to academics, mixed methodology. You have the data, and then you have which is quantitative, and then you have the qualitative. There's certain intangibles that the data doesn't show. Like, does he have a good read on a fly ball?
Mm-hmm.
His arm, like a right fielder, does he have a strong arm? You really can't measure that with statistics. Okay. So I think both are important. We talk about in academics mixed methodology, using quantitative data, statistics, and qualitative, doing interviews, finding out about the player, makeup, things like that. So I think you have to look at both.
Do you look at marketability? Like you see someone like with the personality of Ohtani and go, kid, you need to go. Like, do you think of that aspect of like, okay, you are important to the game of baseball, or is it just mainly just it's too is that too big, thinking too big?
Well, I think that comes later, but you
Mm,
obviously you're looking for the best talent and guys who can help, contribute to your team, and who can contribute to a major league team, especially if you're signing pros from Japan. You're not signing them usually for minor league contracts. These are big money
right.
signings like Ohtani. Actually, Ohtani, they didn't have to pay that much for him because he's under 25 years old. Uh, there's new
Oh,
rules
they
in
got him on a
MLB.
rookie deal.
Right, right. But if he's over 25, like you Darvish, he got $57 million or whatever it was, crazy money like that, 59 million. You're looking for guys who can jump right onto an MLB team and help contribute or win a championship. Now, not so much in Japan because it's a little bit uh, taboo to sign amateurs or even scout them. There's kind of a gentleman's agreement between MLB and the Japanese league, like, hey, please don't try to sign amateur players or guys out of high school.
Mm,
We want them to play in our league first. And rightfully so. It would ruin the league in Japan if you had all the good players going right to MLB. Korea, there's more amateur signings, and Taiwan, places like that are maybe more open to it. Yeah.
any famous players you've scouted in the past that have made the way across the pond?
Ohtani. I mean, every team was on him.
I figured.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he we actually got in with people very close to him, because you cannot talk to him directly, but we got in with people who were close to him and made it known that we were very open to him doing both as a two-way player. Um, which a lot of teams were averse to, like, no, he's got to pick one or the other. Yeah,
Mhm.
but if but he wanted to go, I think, to the West Coast and to the American League, where he can be a two-way player, DH and pitch. He also wanted to go somewhere where there were no Japanese players really in the organization, or I think a history of them.
Mm,
So eliminated a lot of teams. He didn't want to go to the Dodgers. Kenta Maeda was there. He didn't
right.
want to be have a senpai kohai, senior junior relationship with any Japanese players, which would automatically occur pretty much if he had gone there.
So Seattle's out, Oakland's out, New York's out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
so
So
the
yeah, very
Angels didn't really have a history of top line Japanese players, and I think who wouldn't want to play in Southern California? That's the best. I lived there for 10 years. To me, it's paradise.
to a lot of people, it's paradise, and to a lot more people, it's on fire.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean,
so
weather-wise, there's other factors. It's very, expensive place, things like that. But if you have the money, I think it's a great place to live.
no, for sure. So how is baseball different in Japan? You know, the rules are pretty much probably the exact same. 60 feet 6 inches, 90 feet to the bag, but the game is different. Like the ball itself is different, right? The seams are raised a little bit on the actual ball. Is that true?
Yeah, it's got and it's also smaller.
It's a
It's
little
slightly
smaller.
smaller. It's tackier. It's easier to grip, where the MLB balls are, more slicker. That's why you have this, this new rule change here, because a lot of guys were getting this too much sticky stuff on their hands and able to have really great command. You had a lot of no hitters in the beginning of the season, record amount in that span of time. But anyhow, it's small ball here. It's kind of like MLB used to be. I think I was watching MLB Network the other day, and the Padres, was it the Padres or the Tigers? I forgot which team were actually bunting in the first inning, and I think he put 5 runs up. But it's small ball here. There's not a lot of launch angle, on the swing. It's more guys hitting. It's really hard to throw a no hitter here because guys will just throw the bat out to make contact.
Yeah.
And even if it's a blooper, they don't care. They want to get on. Um, I'm actually doing a study for Saber on the art of bunting. Is it dying across the world? Not here so much. Actually in the Central League and the Pacific League, there's a little uptick over the last few years. And I'm comparing the bunting here compared to Taiwan, the CPBO, the KBO, and NL and AL. And I'll reveal that later on. But bunting is very much alive here, as well as small ball. And
Good.
yeah, the pitchers here don't have the velocity that they have in MLB, but they pitch backwards. Guys coming over here, hitters would be really surprised to see a first pitch slider or a curveball. Where MLB, it's fastball right away. You could pretty much tell the first pitch is going to be a fastball. It's more of a team concept here, less ego. Even the superstars here, I think, are there's less ego here. It's baseball, old school baseball here. I think it's they still have the pitchers still hit in one of the leagues, in the Central League. Hopefully that'll still continue. I don't know if that's going to continue in MLB. This year there's ties after 9 innings because of COVID.
Ooh, I don't like that.
So,
You had me at gritty baseball. I like the fundamentals. I'm a small ball kind of guy. That's why I love the Yankees, but god damn it, guys, just shoot for a single, get a bunt, a sac fly, gritty baseball. But the whole extra inning rule, the man on second base drives me crazy, but a tie would drive me even more crazy.
Well, it used to be they would have a tie after 12 innings. They played 3 extra innings, but now because of COVID, it's after 9 innings. That's it. It's a tie. So there was a pitcher, Carter Stewart, who's with the SoftBank Hawks. He was a first-round MLB pick, but the Braves passed on him. They saw something on his wrist, so he signed with SoftBank, and he was part of a 3-man no-hitter. But the game ended in a 0-0 tie.
Oh God.
Yeah,
oh God, I would have lost my mind. But guys, come on. There's someone in the last 2 innings, but guys, someone just swing for the fences. I know we don't do angled swings here, but for God's sake, someone do it.
Yeah. So, and he said like no one was really happy, and he was like, "Come on, guys, we threw a no hitter. They didn't have any hits off us."
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's the fans are crazy here. It's very organized cheering. Right now it's quiet. It's kind of eerie, but normally, pre-COVID, and hopefully we'll get back to normal as soon as possible, as soon as it's safe. you'll have the horn sections and the drums in the outfield and songs for each player going again in Japan.
Really? They have all that over there? I mean, now it's
they have practice. Like, they practice too. It's like band practice, and if you don't show up, you're thrown out of the. It's called Owendon. It's the cheering section. It's hardcore.
I love it. I love it.
I hope you could come over here and see a game. It changed my life. It changed my life.
One day. There's a lot of things I gotta do in Japan. In America, baseball, unfortunately, is a struggling sport. There's plenty of reasons for that. Fandom is it comes and goes. I think baseball is back on an upswing in America. But that was the next question. Like, how is the culture on a bit different in Japan when it comes to fandom and marketing? And just the people going crazy, and also with the players, I guess, with team loyalty. Like, you don't see many more Derek Jeters around in American baseball. People chase the money, they chase the World Series rings. I guess you got Mike Trout every now and then who's on that long deal. But is it like that in Japan?
Well, the first part of the question, the fans are nuts. I told you that before. The fans are pretty crazy and into it. They've got little bats they're hitting together during the games, and they have actually cheering sections and drum. They're very loyal. They don't boo. You're not going to hear boos. I've never heard a boo here or in Korea. I heard a boo once in Korea because a player said an insensitive thing towards a foreign player. Get into that later. It's actually in my book. It was related to Shane Newman, who played in Korea. But so the fans are very loyal. This situation going on with the Mets and the players and the thumbs down. There would never be anything like that over here. The fans wouldn't boo the player, first off. And then the second part of your question, what was that again?
It was team loyalty. Like, do players stick with their teams?
Yeah, they do. You don't see much trades. You see guys play pretty much the duration of their career with the same team. There's a player called Tetsuro Yamada who plays for the Swallows, and he was coming to the end of his contract with them, and he wound up re-signing with them. Probably could have got more money from other teams. It was reported other teams wanted him, but he stuck with them because there is much more loyalty here. You don't see trades that often. Much less. It's not a lot of. That's not a big part of the culture, baseball culture in Japan or Korea so much. But MLB, there's it's more. Well, I'd say they're more team orientated here, and MLB is more. It's more of a business. How can I make the most out of my career? Which you can't blame the players for, but that's kind of probably looked down upon more here. It's more about loyalty and team harmony, and that's taught from a very young age here. Where you have to work together and be loyal to your classmates and your teachers and your parents and all that stuff. Not to say that doesn't go on in the States, but it's a little more different team concept here than in the States.
Yeah, from what I know about Japanese culture, they're big on tradition and respect, and I'm glad that takes over in baseball because they did take the traditional sense of baseball and they stuck to it. So I am very glad to hear that they stick to the fundamentals, they stick to the loyalty. Not booing is interesting because I'll boo the Yankees. I'll boo the Yankees.
Really no booing. Even they don't really even boo the other team, the opposing team. Very very rarely, and bench clearing brawls and fights don't really ensue. Have you seen the movie Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck?
No.
Great movie to learn about the culture of baseball here. So if a player hits another player, the pitcher, by accident, they'll tip their hat. It's like a gesture of I'm sorry. So he did that. The Japanese player did that to Tom Selleck, but he just came from MLB, and he didn't know that tipping the hat means I'm sorry. He thought that he meant to hit him, and he charged him out. And there's a famous line the translator is yelling out, "He tipped his cap! He tipped his cap!" Or one of the players, "He's sorry." So so you don't see a lot of fighting and things like that so much, bench clearing brawls like you do in MLB, which is exciting. The arguing, you never really see umpires come out and challenge coaches or managers come out and challenge the umpires so much here. Even though video is pretty new, even before that, you didn't see it. I think there was a generation like in the 70s and 80s and 90s where that was more popular here.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I'd like to do some research on that and find out why that is. But it's really interesting. You don't really see that. MLB, you still see it, even though there's replay and the replay rule. But you do see managers coming out and challenging balls and strikes still because that's still not automated. If the robots take over, well, then there won't be that either. So,
I mean, I like the human element of the game.
mhm.
Baseball, it's always been a human game. Mistakes, blown calls are literally a part of the game. But, there's certain circumstances, like a few years ago in that Tigers pitcher, I think Galarraga was his name, had that perfect game, and the umpire blew the
Yes.
call at first base by
Jim
a mile.
Jim Joyce, I think
Jim
it was. That was
Joyce.
terrible.
And then he did it again in the playoffs that year. It's like, so situations like that, or in the playoffs, like, no, you definitely need instant replay. I've come around to it. But balls and strikes, no. No. The umpire can have a blown call, all right? That's the human part of the game. I don't want a robot umpire, all right?
Yeah.
America needs jobs.
Yeah.
Umpires matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I do miss more of the arguing and that because that was a great part of the game. The theatrics, the Earl Weavers, the Billy Martins, Lou Piniella coming out throwing the bases. You don't really see that much over here. There was
Lou
a guy.
Piniella, that's a name.
Marty Brown, who was a manager here in Japan. He would throw the bases, and then it's in my book, there were T-shirts made up, danger, my manager throws bases, in Japanese. But I honestly, you rarely see a manager come out here and argue anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say I wish they did, but I did enjoy that theatrics, and then, like also, it shows your team that you have their back. Sometimes the managers just do that to show the team that they have their back and they're behind them.
And as a manager, that's so important. Like, there's times I'm like, Boone, like, what are you doing? Like, get up. Your team's been losing 5 games in a row. Like, you're losing first. Like, what are you doing? But, that's just reflective of the Japanese culture. So that totally makes sense. But I kind of want to shift to a little more of the history of baseball.
Sure.
Specifically around scandals of baseball. Because I don't know how good you are on your history, but the Black Sox scandal, obviously a huge scandal. I know a lot about it, but I don't think there's much to talk about there. But like the Pete Rose scandal, he bet on himself for gambling. Is Pete Rose a Hall of Famer? Could he be?
I mean, statistics wise, yeah, but he bet on his own team. I wish, I think he's had a few opportunities to make it right, but for whatever reason, I guess the commissioners at the time or MLB didn't feel that he had apologized the way they wanted him to. I think he kind of had a few chances to really make it right. I'm not sure if he did, but I would love to see him go in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if it's going to happen in his lifetime. It's unfortunate. Yeah, that whole thing.
I mean, look, you got the Houston Astros where the whole team, the whole organization cheated, and they're all still in baseball. Alex Cora is a manager again. Altuve's putting up great numbers again. Springer's having a great season. Beltran's out of baseball. But if these guys can still be in baseball for literally cheating like that, but Pete Rose gets popped for betting on himself, Pete Rose is a degenerate gambler, but I think the Astros shouldn't be an organization anymore. And all those people should be expelled from baseball forever. Like, what do you think of that whole scandal? Because don't get me wrong, a lot of teams do.
I think you hit on the head. A lot of teams were doing it. They just didn't get caught.
They got caught.
So, and I think they apologized about it, right?
Yeah.
Where I don't know, maybe they feel Pete Rose didn't really apologize or wasn't genuine about his gambling on his team.
I mean, Pete Rose has a history of being not a nice person. I mean, he literally ended a catcher's career in an all-star game when he just rushed the plate and took him out.
So Ray Fosse, was that his name?
I have no idea. I just know the clip. But Pete Rose has a reputation for not being the nicest person in the world. And baseball writers don't forget that. Like you see this past voting turnout with Curt Schilling. Now, my personal opinion, Curt Schilling is a borderline Hall of Famer. But, he takes it personally because they think the writers just don't like him, which may or may not be true. But Curt Schilling, you're kind of also kind of a jerk.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was very outspoken, and you have to, the writers are the people who are going to decide. So you have to build a good rapport with them. It's really, there is politics that comes into it. That's how it is. There's no, there's not one person deciding either. So, and
there's certain fans that don't like that the MLB writers vote. Who in your mind should vote? Because personally, the writers make sense. They cover baseball. They know baseball better than literally anybody. They know the heart and soul of baseball with all the stats, all the writing, all the stories, this, that, and the other. Who else would do it? Do you think it's the writers or should be someone else or a combo?
That's a good question. I think you need to have talent evaluators in there too. Former MLB players, former Hall of Famers. Well, they do have the Hall of Fame committee that votes people in. Current managers. Unfortunately, with the writers, they don't really. A lot of them know how to evaluate players past statistics. There's other things that come into it. So, I'd like to see, I'm into mixed triangulation with my research, not just getting the opinion of the data or the coaches. Let's look at different things. Let's look at data. Let's get writers' opinions. Let's get former players' opinions and coaches and managers and things like that who really know the game best.
Yeah, no, I can't rebuke that. I cannot counter that. I think that definitely makes sense. A combo, but then you have too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe is my only critique, but baseball. The baseball.
If you get this, what is it? 70%? You need?
70. I think it's 70%. And one thing I would change: the writers only have X amount of votes they can give towards players, which is silly to me. Just like if you have 10 votes you can give, I don't know what the actual numbers. Let's say it's 10. And, if you want to vote for 11, someone's going to get screwed. So that's silly to me. You should be able to vote for as many people as you want or you think deserve it. But then again, the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York is the most prestigious Hall of Fame in all of sports. I think the Basketball Hall of Fame's in Ohio or Cleveland. I don't even know where the Football Hall of Fame is.
I think it's in Massachusetts.
Oh, the Football Hall of Fame's in Ohio then.
Canton, yeah. Well, you haven't been to the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in the Tokyo Dome. It's pretty cool.
Well, I gotta go to Tokyo. Tokyo Dome. I want to see Wrestle Kingdom in a Tokyo Dome. Don't get me wrong.
Wrestling is huge there. WWE and the Japanese league. I'm not sure the name of it.
New Japan Pro Wrestling. But have you been to the Hall of Fame? When's the last time you've been to the Hall of Fame?
Oh, probably 20, 25 years ago. I'd like to go back and I have a 6-year-old now who's getting into baseball, and my 3-year-old, they like it. Maybe when they get a little older, but and I think I'd enjoy it more as an adult now.
Yeah.
No,
definitely me too. Because as a kid, my parents took me 3 times. My dad's huge baseball fan. Baseball's huge in my family. So when I'm from Massachusetts, South Shore of Boston, diehard Yankee fan, by the way.
Really? How did that happen?
So my dad's from Jersey. My dad grew up in Summit, New Jersey, and baseball is his life. So my mom's from Quincy, Massachusetts. So when they met, they got married and moved up to Boston to be close to my mom's parents. So my dad brought up me and my brother as Yankee fans. So you can imagine how hard that was in 2004 being in 4th grade. But
I bet you had a lot of problems in school if you were.
Oh yeah, it was phenomenal. So that's where I wish fans did. I wish American fans didn't boo. That's what you said. Japanese fans don't boo the other team. I was like, oh my god, my people. So, but Cooperstown was really a relatively close drive. So we went 3 or 4 times as vacation during the summer. Last time I went, I was in high school. I brought two of my friends from high school. Probably I was 16, 17 years old. As an adult, I definitely want to go back because last time I was there, you go through the museum's great, but the actual hall with all the plaques, like being 16 years old, I'm there reading all these plaques because at that time I was also watching Ken Burns' baseball, the
Right.
11-part documentary series now. So I was just like, oh, like I know all of these players. I want to read their plaques. My friends were like, Will, let's get out of
That's
here. I'm
hardcore.
bored.
You could spend days in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm
The town's really cool too. I'd like to check out the town and the baseball shops. I actually got sorry, I don't have them. I want next time maybe if you have me on, I'll show you some of my Japanese baseball cards. I just got back into collecting cards again, but I'm going for Japanese cards only.
Yeah, Phil, you were reading my mind. That was like one of my next questions. Like, are you a collector?
1 sec. I'll show you one card here.
Go for it. This is podcast, ladies and gentlemen. He just hops up on his computer and goes get the baseball card. Love it. Good thing we're not live, Phil.
Yeah, here's Ohtani's rookie card.
Oh wow,
Japanese rookie.
How much is that going to be worth in 10 years?
I don't know. The American cards are worth more. For some reason, they're not worth as much. I think I paid about $30 for this US 3,000 yen.
Well, that's another interesting thing because a while ago, collectors were saying baseball cards are going to be worth a lot of money. Like, a Derek Jeter rookie card or like a Roger Clemens rookie card would go for thousands of dollars. And now they're barely worth the paper they're printed on. Baseball cards themselves and baseball card shows. My dad took me to a few shows, give me $100 to go have fun. But that whole collecting thing, specifically baseball cards, tops, this didn't pan out as much as it did. Is it popular in Japan?
It is popular, but very niche. It's the only place that sells them is, well, you can get them online, and then you have to go to like baseball card stores or memorabilia stores, things like that. So there's no in the supermarkets or Target or Walmart. The equivalent here would be like Eon, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have them there. They don't have them in the convenience stores. They have everything else in a kombini, as they call them, except for baseball cards. They've got the anime cards and things like that. So they're kind of hard to get. I wish they would be more accessible in terms of places you could buy them. Here's Murakami's rookie card. He was with the San Francisco Giants. He signed that for me. He's a friend of mine. This is a lot of people don't think it. They think it's Hideo Nomo. He is the first MLB player from a Japanese-born MLB player with the San Francisco Giants, and then he came back and played for the Hawks.
What year did he go over?
He played like 63, 64, somewhere in that neighborhood. His first game was at Shea Stadium. He came out of the bullpen.
Well, with most things, whoever gets the credit for being a trailblazer isn't typically usually the trailblazer. But Hideo Nomo did open, like you said earlier, open a door for literally everybody. Because between that first gentleman you showed me in the 60s, Murakami, and then Hideo Nomo, how many players really came over? If
none, zero.
There you go. So that's why.
So yeah. So in the modern era, it was Nomo.
Yeah.
But
okay, baseball history. I wonder if my dad knows that. My dad knows everything about baseball. He can tell you where he was, like when Jackie Robinson hit his 3 home runs in the 77 World Series. Like he can tell you like all of these different crazy stats. I'm gonna trick him with that one and see if he knows that one.
Yeah. Who was the first Japanese-born player in MLB? Oh. And he wanted to stay in America. He signed with the Nankai Hawks. Now they're the SoftBank Hawks. And he said, "No, I don't want to sign. I want to go to America and play." He was beyond, light years ahead of everybody. Nobody would think like that. So he went. They're like, "All right, we'll let you go, and you could go in the San Francisco Giants organization." They had a working relationship. You could go over there and learn your English and play baseball. So they kind of forgot about him. Like he went over there on the farm, then he came up to the big leagues, and then they said, "Oh wait, he's on the big leagues." And Murakami-san wanted to stay. He's like, "I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. I want to stay here and play." They were like, it almost caused an international incident. Anyhow, they're like, "Okay, you could stay one more year, and then you have to come back to us." So that, and I've spoken to him about that. I think that really was something that he wished he could have stayed over there. He really likes talking to Americans and still trying to use his English because he has such great memories of over there. I mean, he played with Willie Mays, and he's been to Willie Mays's home. Great, great man, Murakami-san. He's in his 70s now, and so we're lucky to have him, and I'm lucky to have spent some time with him.
Love it. All right, Phil, we're going to wrap up this podcast with some rapid fire. So favorite team of all time, American and Japanese?
Well, I let me stay away from the American one. That's a tricky one. I mean, I grew up a Yankees fan. Okay. But I do not work for them. So I, of course, cheer for the team I work for now. Japanese.
Fair.
First I lived in Osaka and I liked the Hanshin Tigers, but then I lived in Nagoya for a long time and got kind of close with the Chunichi Dragons. I'm more of a fan of players in Japan, but if I had to tell you one place to go and watch a game, it would be Koshien Stadium. It's just off the charts. 45,000 people going nuts. Now, right, again, with the situation now, it's not what it was, but hopefully it'll get back to that. And that's the place where you have the famous high school tournament in the summer where, I don't know how the kids do it. It's like 95 and 1,000,000% humidity. But wow. It's like every Japanese baseball player's dream as a kid to go to Koshien. It's a high school tournament and play there. And it's like the NCAA tournament in America. People – they got the games on at work, or they're during Obon, which is vacation time in the summer where you go home and see your family. The game's on, at my in-laws' house 24/7. It starts in the morning and it goes all the way at night. So you have like 3-4 games in a day. It's just nuts.
All right, so that's your favorite Japanese ballpark. What about American ballpark? Is that going to be a team you work for as well? You know what? I'll give American ballpark.
Listen, I'm gonna talk about
it could be a ballpark that's been torn down. That's totally fine.
Okay, that's torn. The old Yankee Stadium.
Old Yankee Stadium's your favorite?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Fenway?
I love Fenway. Even though I didn't grow up a Yankees, I love Fenway. I went to Wrigley, but the game got rained out.
Oof. I haven't been to Wrigley yet, but as a Yankee fan, my favorite ballpark of all time is Fenway Park. Even over old Yankee Stadium. Even over old Yankee Stadium. Fenway Park is just magic.
Because the old Yankee Stadium was more modern, right? It was built, it was like refurbished in the 70s. So it kind of had that 70s flair to it.
Like it was built in the 20s.
And it was big. I like a smaller ballpark too.
Like the old Yankee Stadium, I was very young the few times I went, but I still remember it because you walk in, you can sense the history. And my uncles would tell me back in the day, like up on the top, you could walk on the banisters, the big white things hanging down. Mm-hmm. You used to be able to walk up there. It's like, damn, if only. But Fenway Park, no matter any time I go, I just walk in, you just get this chill of, ooh, this is baseball. It's literally like a cathedral. It's very religious. So Fenway Park is definitely my favorite ballpark. I wish I could have gone to the Polo Grounds. I wish I could have gone to Ebbett Field, but I was gone. They were gone by the time I was born.
He went once to Ebbets Field, and you would exit through the outfield, so all the fans would go on to the field after the game and walk out. That must have been something. My dad said his dad took him to one game there. That must have been something. My grandfather grew up right near there in Brooklyn, where Ebbets Field used to be. Now there's just like a placard there. That's it.
Yeah. It's like a park now, literally. I do regret not going to Shea, but I have been to City. City Field's great. New Yankee Stadium's great. I gotta get out to Wrigley. I want to go to Houston's Park, Seattle. I want to go to like all the parks, really.
There's so many great parks. Citizens Bank. I love Camden Yards.
Yep.
San Diego Petco is one of my favorites. Yeah.
The Giants Stadium in the Bay.
That's a great one. I forgot they change the name every few years. I think is it PNC now or
I think PNC is Pittsburgh.
Okay. Anyhow, great park. Been to some minor league parks. The new one in Vegas. I haven't been in it, but I've seen it from the outside. Looks beautiful. Yeah.
All right. So, favorite ball player of all time, American and Japanese.
Thurman Munson
Really?
died in a plane crash. I
Yeah.
was
No,
a young
I
boy,
know.
loved him.
Captain of the
Yeah.
Yankees. Also,
Yep,
so
captain, the captain.
that's my father's favorite baseball player.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very surprised you said Thurman Munson because Thurman Munson was the captain, and they said there'll never be another Yankee captain. And then there was Derek Jeter. They're like, okay, that's
Right.
fine. But yeah,
Yep.
Thurman Munson, interesting. What about Thurman Munson? What drew you to Thurman Munson? Was it the mustache?
He had the goatee. He was just a badass. This
Yeah.
guy. He was clutch in the playoffs. He was a
Yep.
clutch hitter, old school. Would choke up on the bat and tough as nails behind the plate. That's he was. I was very young when he died, but that's what I remember about. And I got to see him. I'm lucky. I got to see him play live and in person in the late '70s. And Japan. There's so many players. I that I've seen. Ohtani, right? I mean, can't
How
go
can you
wrong with
not?
that.
Yeah.
Ohtani, Ichiro, Matsui.
Godzilla.
I love those guys.
I was a big fan of Matsui
and they
growing
panned
up.
out in both leagues, right? Matsui and Ichiro. It's and Ohtani. It's very hard. Like there's been a lot of guys who've come through Japan and PB and gone over to MLB, but how many of them have been really had much success there? Been all stars.
Didn't Matsui play in the Angels? Didn't Matsui do a year
for
for
a
the Angels?
year,
A year
towards the end, maybe.
So Ohtani's like we're gonna ignore that.
Yeah, I think it was for a year or something. It might have been one of his last clubs.
Last year's
maybe closed with Tampa.
He did get a big year with Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you ever go back to Yankee Stadium, New Yankee Stadium, they have the museum there. They have Thurman Munson's locker, as an exhibit.
I used to work for Fox Sports with Joe Buck and Tim McCarver, helping out with the stats, and Steve Horn, who was my mentor over at NBC Sports. He's Joe Buck's right hand man, and I've been in the Yankee clubhouse a bunch of times before the game. Back then, the big thing was, can you go down and get the lineup? Like now, it's like given out to the public, before the games. I get it. Tweeted to me every day or messages from MLB app, but and I forgot to look now I remember his locker was in there because they kept his locker the way it was, but I'm sure I glanced at it, but I forgot to look at it. I've been in the clubhouse a few times back at the old
my friend sent me a picture of it last time he was in the stadium. I'll email it to you after this. I'll send it to you.
Oh, please.
But,
yeah.
How is Joe Buck as a
Great
person?
Guy.
Great guy? I thought so, because everyone in the States
gets
hates
a bad
Joe
rap.
Buck.
People like to run with, he hates my team. The guy's fair. He's a great announcer.
I love Joe Buck.
He's a good guy.
I'm a ding dong baby. I love Joe Buck. Guy gets a bad rap.
Mm-hmm. I'd say he's, like, in my opinion, the best announcer, in for his generation, baseball wise. Yeah.
Position on the field. What did you play?
Catcher, of course, because I want to be like Thurman Munson and wear number 15. Second base, and I tried pitching a little bit, but wasn't very tall. You need some plane for that.
Yeah, no, I'm left-handed, so I played first base. I played first base, left-handed, and a little bit of pitching. So the highlight of my baseball career, maybe my life, was 12 years old, my last year little league before moving up to like the older league, on the Red Sox, which was just like the thorn in my side, playing on the Red Sox as a Yankee fan. But we lost the first game of the season, never looked back, won 21 straight games through the playoffs. The first game of the playoffs, I'll never forget this. Peter Lawrence threw a no-hitter. We won 1-0. Tommy Costello at second base made an error, but he's the one who got the only hit of the game, a double, stole second, stole home. That was the only one in the game.
Wow, you have some memory, man. When this was in elementary school?
I was 12 years old, probably sixth grade. I'll never forget this. I'll never forget Peter Lawrence threw a no-hitter. But then we destroyed the semifinals. In the finals, I'm on the mound to close it out. And, I had a full count. We were up by probably 3 runs.
Anybody on base?
No one on base.
Okay.
So like we were going to win regardless. But I remember it was a 3-2 count, and Connor Bolger was up at bat. I'll never forget this either because he was a friend of mine. And I remember thinking, all right, well, let's throw it as hard as you can. So I gripped the ball, threw it as hard as I can. It was ball 4, but the umpire called it strike 3. And I had the best fist pump, everyone found me at the mounds. And we won it all. We won a championship. So that was
nice.
That was like, as a kid for baseball specifically, I played basketball and soccer, but I wasn't good at baseball either. But I always wanted to win a championship. We won 21 games in a row. Never forget that team. That whole team was absolutely crazy. So that's my fondest baseball memory. What is your fondest baseball memory as a fan, as a player, or whatever?
Well, as a fan, I was working for Fox in 2000 at the Subway Series, and I got to be in the booth when the Yankees won the World Series at Shea Stadium. That sticks out the most for me.
Was it TV or radio?
TV, Fox Sports. Okay. Yeah, I was working with Joe Buck and Tim McCarver. Oh man, put me on the spot here as a player. I guess the first time I threw a player out at second base in high school, that was probably the biggest high. And then I think I didn't have the greatest arm, so that was. And at third base, I get guys, but second, rarely.
it's a longer throw. That's why it's a longer throw.
Yep.
All right, Phil. I think that is a perfect place to wrap it. We went a little long, but hey, man, talking baseball, we went into extras. You are early in the morning. Hope I didn't take too much time into your work day. But
no, actually, it's fine. Yep. I'm on vacation now for another few weeks with the teaching. Actually, our semester starts up again mid-September, but I actually have some baseball scouting stuff to work on today. But
so your book is called Baseball English.
Baseball English.
Tell Edwin where they can find it, your plugs, anything you want to promote, my friend. The floor is yours.
Amazon and sports. If you do it on sportsenglish.org, get free shipping. I don't know if you're on Amazon if you get the free shipping. Go Sports English is my Twitter at Go Sports English. That's pretty much it. Working on a few more books for Sports English Press. Rugby English with a guy named Glenn Brown, who's a Kiwi. He's from New Zealand because I don't know much about rugby, so you got to have a rugby guy in there on that one. And then working on Sports English, we'll have a book with 10 units, 1 unit on different sports, a unit on cricket, rugby, baseball, table tennis, popular sports in the world, golf, baseball, hockey. Working on that with the professor from Korea by the name of Steven Feigenbaum. He's from Jersey too. So we're trying to help English learners really learn about sports English because, there's really not a lot of books out there for learning about sports English. There's books out there about learning general English, business English, but we want to help the people who are really motivated to learn English, but more so through a sport that might motivate them more. I have friends who are teaching private English lessons to some students, and they really have a tough time with teaching them because they're not so interested in English, but they're interested in baseball. So they're teaching them through this book, and they find that they're more motivated now to learn English because of this book. So things like that. We're trying to reach those people who are not either very motivated to learn sports English or not so motivated to learn English, but this is a way in through learning, maybe they like sports and this will motivate them to learn English more.
All right, Phil, thank you so much again for your time and being a guest.
Really enjoyed it, man. You're a great host. You made me feel comfortable. I feel like I've known you for years, the way we were talking.
Well, that's what baseball does, man. Baseball, when you talk about baseball, it's America's pastime, man. We're both Americans. Baseball, it's easy. It's easy. And I have been doing this a long time, maybe a little too long or not long enough, depending who you ask. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been the very first episode of Talking with Tarashuk. I am your host, Will Tarashuk, T as in Thomas, ARASHUK. You can find this podcast and all of my other podcasts at ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com with my other podcasts, The Comfort Zone, Kings of the Rings podcast, the Ambiguous podcast solution, where I talk to podcasters about their drive and their journey. And all of our other podcasts can be found on ambiguouspodcastsolutions.com or wherever you find your podcasts. We'll be back next time with a brand new guest with yours truly. But until then, go buy the book and go watch some baseball, because it's America's pastime, and goddamn it, I'm not going to let it die on my watch. Until then, everybody, take care and have a good one.
Take care. Thanks.